Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. And today I'm having with me Abdulsamad Humaidan, who is my friend that I knew with the TESOL International Association. And Abdulsamad is one of a kind person. So I'm so glad to have Abdulsamad today with me as my guest for the IKIGAI International podcast. So hello, Abdulsamad. How are you?
Hey, Yousra, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. So I always tell the story of how I knew my guests, and sometimes it turns out to be not the same story they know. So I've known you, Abdulsamad, through the TESOL International Association as someone who is very active. And actually, I've received from you like 2 years ago kind of suggestion for, you were sharing the proposals to review the proposals for the TESOL International. So you're reaching out and as an active professional, so that to collaborate and that everyone will be included into reviewing the proposals. And that's how I knew you, actually. And also, you're very active when it comes to other social media. So, mashallah, you're a nice person, and very professional. And that's how I knew you, from the positive energy that you're showing to the world. And that's part of who really is inspired by Ikigai and who wants to know more about this podcast. So I'm glad that you are my guest today. And for whoever, yes, I'm sorry.
Sure, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I mean, the first time we kind of start connecting, I still remember that was in June 2020. First, that's 2 years ago. I was at that time reaching out to professionals and members of the teacher educators interest section, inviting them to review proposals for the convention. Thank you. Yeah, that was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago. I told you.
I know.
I knew you like a long time ago before TEFL Kuwait, and now we are colleagues. We are collaborating together with the TEFL Kuwait Association, and I'm really so glad to be working with you, Abdulsamad. You show your punctuality and your professionalism at every occasion, and I'm glad you are my guest today for the Ikigai podcast. And I know that the term ikigai sounds like new to some people, and for whoever sees it, it's not an English word actually, but it has been adapted into the English terminology very recently. So to explain a little bit to whoever listens to the Ikigai podcast as an audio version or watch the video, we'll be watching the video on YouTube. Ikigai is a Japanese term. It's kind of an umbrella word. Iki means life, gai means purpose. So life purpose, which means la raison d'être in French, life purpose in English. So the ikigai. And everyone has an ikigai that does not necessarily, or is not necessarily linked to work. So ikigai can be linked to your communal work, your studies, your academic field, your whatever you do, and whatever added value you add to the world. And can you tell us, Abdulsamad, first, I'm interested to know, when was the first experience you came across your passion for learning English as a learner? So was it because of a teacher who inspired you, of a lesson? How was it?
Yeah. Again, firstly, I wanted to extend my thank you to you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be with a colleague, a professional who is very active like you, and who is bringing a lot to the table of the profession, not just TESOL International Association, but also the TEFL Kuwait. And as you mentioned, we are both members of the board, and we are all serving our profession. That's language learning and teaching. So coming back to your question about how did I start my journey with English? It was actually when I was in 7th grade. I grew up in Yemen, and I went through public education. So in Yemen, you start studying English from 7th to 12th grade. And in 7th grade, that was my first year, I had a teacher whose name was Nasser, and he was the first person who inspired me really to like English. And that's where I started from. So I started with English from seventh grade, and I did well. My grade was 92 or 93. It was like an A. And that encouraged me to continue with the English. Then, so eighth grade, ninth grade to 12th grade, I kept almost straight A's in English. And that what kept me, oh, English is something I would like to have as a skill, as an asset for future, for life, for career, and for many aspects to navigate multiple ways in life. And that's where I started.
Nice to know this, Abdulsamad. And I will share with you my experience as well, so
Please.
that you have an insight how I love the English language. So I studied English here in Tunis, in Tunisia. And at that particular time when I was studying, I studied at a private school. So usually in my country, so English is not taught at that young age. So I started learning English at the age of 5. And I started to like how my teachers introduced us to the English language through songs, through movies. Like we used to watch short movies like during break time. And so that's how my love for English actually started a long time ago before going to university. So, as you said, sometimes the inspiration can be from someone who taught us, or from someone who studies with us, or sometimes it's just an experience, and for other people it can be through a travel experience, or for others it can be academic. So but it's good to know more about the way you started loving English, Abdulsamad. So my next question is related to the experience of Abdulsamad before the international experience and the international scopes. So let's go back and talk more about the past. And can you remember your first teaching experience? How was it? If you have something nice to share with us, yes, please do not hesitate to tell us.
Sure, thank you. So thinking back about the first experience of teaching, and I would like to say also something about what was the major that I wanted to pursue before English. It seems interesting because I had like 4 or 5 friends and who had like different paths to start at the beginning, and then they ended up moving into English like me. So I grew up wishing to be a doctor, and especially a cardiologist. My father is a doctor. My father did his undergrad and grad in Soviet Russian, and growing up seeing and looking up at your father as a doctor, that really inspired me to be a doctor. And then when I came to high school in Yemen, based on the GPA that you got in high school, then you can choose which school to go for college. And because my grade was enough to get me in all colleges except medicine, so medicine was not a choice because of my GPA. Though my GPA was fine, but then it's how it becomes like highly competitive, and a lot of people just compete for the college and school of medicine. And then I thought at that time English has been a strength, so why not to pursue English for university? At the same time, I was applying for a scholarship to go to Germany and study medicine at the same time. I applied for the university, I got accepted, started learning and pursuing an undergrad in English. And then it didn't happen for the medicine for Germany. So I was like, it seems that's the track, that's the path to continue with. I I finished like freshman and think it was almost junior. And then there was an opportunity to teach at a Central Language locally in TES, and where I grew up. And then I applied for them. I got an interview, and they were, oh, yeah, we're fine. Let's start as teaching elementary classes for English. And I did. So that was in 2005, almost 18 years ago. I'm aging myself, but you can tell now, like, oh, wow. I mean, that was like his junior year. So that was like the beginning. It was a marvelous experience because though I was pursuing English and translation, at the same time, I was teaching at the Central Language.
I have a question related to translation because I'm someone who likes cross-cultural exchange, and I think translation is the best channel for that because we deal not only with the language but also with cultures. You know, with translation we don't translate words for words, just exact translation of word for word, but we do look for meaning and content and context. So what particularly do you like about translation, if you still like translation till now?
I do. I
Yeah.
do indeed. So because it was my undergrad, and I would like to give a shout out to my undergrad institution where I pursued the degree. It was University of Science and Technology in Yemen in Taiz. And the program included like almost 13 classes of translation. Technically, when you go to third year and fourth year, it's in every semester you take like 3 classes in translation. What I loved about translation, it's like bringing what you said, the two cultures together, but also the two languages, like Arabic and English, because I speak Arabic as my first language. So now I have Arabic and English. It's like a kind of two bank accounts, and you are able to invest in those two bank accounts. So you can withdraw, which is knowledge now, not money, and then put that together. During the program, it was really helpful to see, as you said, the bridge between cultures like the West and the East, like Yemen and the Middle East, and like Europe and the US as the West, and bringing the language into the translation and doing a lot of work to bridge the knowledge between two cultures. And you know, when we talk about bridging cultures, we are talking about people, interaction, intercultural aspects. And that's also, when we reach that moment, it's also one of the big aspects. I think I'm in the US, it's bringing that bridge between the East and the West.
Exactly, Abdulsamad. And I'd like to elaborate on this a little bit when it comes to translation. And not only translation, but let's say polyglot people, generally speaking. What do you think are the advantages of learning not only a second language, but a foreign language? So since we're linking this episode from the IKIGAI podcast to TESOL, career paths, and ELT most specifically, so I'm interested to know to what extent a polyglot person can be much more privileged when working or studying in a multicultural context.
Sure. I mean, coming back to kids when they're learning, or young people when they learn the language, it's again, it's I would refer back to the idea of having two bank accounts in kind of either you're like the same bank or two different banks. So when you speak two languages, it's also a mental capacity where the brain is bringing a kind of two engines. Though there are some psycholinguists would argue it's not two engines, it's only one engine, but also with rich like investment. But that starts from young age. So when kids start learning a language, they have that kind of being able to move into those two parts, speaking two languages. When you grow up, then like going in public school or even private schools, so if you have English or any other languages, but because we are focusing here in English, then that opens more doors for you. Like you can study science in English or French or Italian. It depends on the language. And that also, again, open doors when you finish high school. You can start applying for universities, either locally, and because of the language, you get more advantage to get accepted because that helps you to learn the material, especially if it's in English or another language. Or if you decide to move to another country, and that what happened in some point in my career and in my life, moving into another country to pursue education or higher education. It could be either for undergrads or grads. So that's on kind of a personal career educational aspect that open doors, but also it helps a person to be able to look at things from different perspectives. And that's what comes back to your question when you talked about the cultures. So it's not just one side, it's always thinking, oh, how do people from other cultures think of this like aspect or event in their shoes?
Mm-hmm. So I like the answer very much. And I was about to ask you, when it comes to your context as a researcher in the field, and how far do you think, let's say, let me reframe the question, so restate it in a different way. Do you think nowadays research should be limited to the local context, or researchers, it's inevitable, so researchers, they should really go beyond that? So I'm fully aware of this, but what are, like, let's say, the benefits that a researcher can get only when being abroad or doing the research, let's say, and by linking this to the cultural aspect?
So as a researcher, and that's also one of my aspects of practice and also identity as a researcher. I mean, being able to speak another language, it's also like bringing, excuse me, strength from one culture, from one context into another context. And for example, if you are doing research in like in Tunisia, and then you're like in the US, so now you can bring all of this skills, the knowledge that you develop in the US, and use them to invest to be able to do research in Tunisia or Yemen or the Middle East context. So it's also bridging the culture campaigns in local context and international context. Another thing is as you know, in research, all research topics are grounded always in the idea of literature review.
Yeah.
And being able to read in another language or speak another language, that helps you and open doors to read in another language and to know what has been conducted as a researcher and what to bring to the table. Yes.
Of course. Yes, exactly. And I will add something else. Is like, I have a lot of, so many friends of mine, and now they're doing research, let's say, all over the world, not only in the USA, in Canada, in Australia, some of them in Europe. And they also bring with them their cultural aspect on the table. It's like, if they're doing literary studies or literary criticism, so the Maghrebian studies that are involved, the North African aspect is there. And so because it's part of our identity, so it's like we bring all that to the fruition, to the research, of course, by bringing our identity, of course, plus bridging the gaps and also the intersection and the interchange that we can have with the different cultures, be it European, Western, let's say, culture. And let's say that interchange can bring a lot of positive aspects. You know, if you read a paper which is written and published by people, let's say, having different nationalities from all over the world, so you will notice, even though we try to make it sometimes like culturally neutral, but in particular at particular stances, let's say, but sometimes you can feel if that education in that particular part of the world is related to let's say Africa, to the Middle East, to let's say the West in general. So I think the cultural aspect is something that cannot be dissociated from us as researchers. And, let's say not only as researchers, but even if you travel like Abdulsamad as a tourist to any country, you'll be bringing that with you. So you'll be trying to speak the language of the locals, of course, but at certain times at a particular moment, so you can bring the added value to that culture by showing them how things are done in your country, in let's say how that word is said in your language, how a particular dish can be cooked in a meal in your country and elsewhere. So that's, I think, what makes the experience rich in value. And I would like to take you a little bit from research and from the academic and career path to Abdulsamad, the person, the human being. And I'm interested to know, Abdulsamad, so what are your passion? Let's say, what are your interests in life? What is your passion? Let's say, apart from teaching and research, what other activities you do in your spare time that can make you resourceful, that can bring positive energy to Abdulsamad? So be it sports, be it arts. I'm interested to know more about this, Abdulsamad.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, I mean, besides academia, besides research, besides teaching and learning, having good friendship relationships, that's also like a big thing. Being able to connect and to relate to people. And as you especially said, like when you move into a new context, or when you move into a new culture where what you said, it's you're bringing your culture, you're bringing your authentic self into the culture where you are. And in this case, with me, it's in the US. So being able to connect with people, being able to have discussions about the Middle East, Yemen, and to have conversations, those are like really valuable moments. So I try my best to invest on friendship relationships and connect with many people here. And it's not just people who are local in the US, but in the university life, it's international aspect. It's a global aspect where you meet people from so different countries. I wouldn't even like meet them if I was in Yemen. So there are sometimes I meet people from countries I don't even know their names or where they are. And I start to be curious. Oh, what is your country? Sorry, I don't know. And start learning about people. So those connection and building those friendship relationship are valuable. Another thing, I like also to go hiking whenever the weather is good. So I would be tending to go for hiking, and also at the same time thinking always how to continue growing as a professional, as a person. You would find me having some books, reading. I would be taking some online sessions, classes, Coursera. I see Coursera as a really big thing. So I would be taking some classes on Coursera about different topics. Sometimes it's mostly focusing on personal growth and improvement, but also at the same time, I would be taking things a little bit different. Like last time, it was in December, and I was taking a cardiology class because, as I said, it was a dream. So now I'm taking a medicine class through Coursera just to fulfill that curiosity, being a doctor and learning, though I'm not using that in my career, but that's something to stretch my thinking, to stretch my mindset, and helping myself to look at things differently.
I think we are on the same wavelength when it comes to extending one's bandwidth, brain bandwidth. I am a serial learner myself. That's what I call myself. I like Coursera a lot and edX. And whenever there is an interesting lesson to me, I just subscribe to the lesson and I learn new things, and not necessarily linked to academia, as you said. So for me, I learned Tai Chi, I learned some Feng Shui, how to organize, let's say, your office according to the energetic field of your office, for example. if you have a window and a door, you never put like your desk, let's say, never put the window just behind you. So it should be on your right or on your left. And you should keep always an eye on the door. So it's part not only of feng shui, but to know who is entering the room. So I've just went through a lot of lessons, among them these. And I think that if a person learns, we learn things not for achievement, not for degrees. So that's how I see it. It's that is part of it. Part of it is for academic achievement and milestones, getting a degree so that we can fulfill our life purpose and let's say career purpose. But sometimes you just learn things just for the sake of knowledge. So you get informed. For example, first ed, let's say, guidelines. So during the COVID, for example, I went through the micro lessons just to know how I can save, let's say, my students just in case, or if anything happens. So we should be fully aware how to react in that particular time. So I think learning is never linked not only it is, but not only to academia, because a lot of people, they just study for the grades and the degrees. I always tell this to my students. When a student, for example, gets an unsatisfying grade, let's call it this way. So they always talk to me and they tell me, Miss, this is unfair. How can I get this grade? And I studied and I put a lot of effort. So, and to explain this, I always say that failure can be a starting point to something else. So go and get, so this is my feedback when it comes to this, go and get further knowledge into this. For example, if it's a presentation, go and review and make some tuning into that presentation so that it will be better. And I think to kind of sum up the learning experience, we should see it and we should teach it as not only linked to, let's say, academic achievement. Because otherwise, everyone will be like, the Monopoly, the game. So everyone will be having those cards, that fake money and fake cards and fake assets, and just degrees that everyone is sharing on social media. No, it's not. It's far beyond that. If you ask them sometimes about something particular about their presentation or what did you learn in that workshop, so they can rarely sometimes say, I'm not generalizing, but I'm just saying, if someone attends a particular workshop that's for learning, or if you read a book that's for you, we should never link learning, let's say, to kind of reward, but it's good to have rewards, and it's good to have awards as well as a researcher, so that to support oneself in the journey. So I'm impressed, by the way, mashallah, Abdulsamad, you're someone who is successful, and you can only be an inspiration to anyone who wants to fulfill research abroad. And can you tell me a little bit about that particular experience when it comes to your career path? So I think now you're a PhD student, or did you complete it? Did you defend your thesis or not yet? Or is it on the go?
Oh, yeah, it's on the way. Thank you for mentioning that. And I appreciate what you said about like being successful. I mean, and success can come in different ways.
Yes.
And that's just, to help everybody to see success can be in different measures, in different scales, and that's okay. Because what you mentioned, because I chose academia, I chose to stay in the field of teaching and learning, but also research. So when I finished up my undergrads, it was a great experience in Yemen. I got like the first on my group, and I got a chance to teach at the same university for 4 academic years. That was University of Science and Technology in Yemen. And then at the same time, I got a chance to teach at the Lebanese International University for 3 academic years. So by that time, there was Fulbright. And I would think like many of us know about Fulbright, which is an exchange program between the US and many countries in the world. And at that time, there was a call for applications for Fulbright to pursue a master's degree. Uh, I was a regular reader for Yemen Times, which is the first Yemeni Times news. And because like I think every month or 2 weeks when they publish the news, the newspaper, I would buy that as a part of the professional and learning improvement. And I kept an eye on that. And then when the call was released, I applied and it went through a process almost like almost 18 months. I was selected with like 6 other colleagues. We were 7 out of 51 applicants. We came to the US and different fields. Because as I shared, my undergrad was in English and translation, and I have been teaching in the university for almost like 4 years. The question is why to go for TESOL, master's degree in TESOL? And that was actually a question during the interview, the Fulbright interview. And I said, because sometimes I would be teaching and I would be asking myself why the lesson plan is not working as I would have expected. And that what made me continue pursuing like higher education in English language teaching. And I came to the US. I did my master's at Southern Illinois University Carbondale, and I joined a Ph.D. program. I'm almost at the end. Now I'm collecting data so I can finish writing the dissertation. But also in August last year, I got that's 2022. I got hired as a lecturer at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, which is one of the top 50 schools, universities in the US, when we think of private and public universities. And in public universities, University of Illinois comes number 16. So that's also like another aspect of career where I am. It's started with my family, the school where I went to, the community I grew up, at the University of Science and Technology in Yemen, Fulbright, Southern Illinois University, and also University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. All of those institutions, all of those communities are what made my experience being here and being, as you kindly said, being successful in that scale.
Good, very good. Thank you, Abdulsamad, and I'm really so proud of you with whatever you have achieved, and best of luck for what is next. And my next question is related to teacher communities in TESOL and beyond. So Abdulsamad is a member, an active member in TESOL associations. What do you think is the added value to you and to the community? Let's say, what are the benefits for teachers nowadays to be active in teacher associations both ways? So let's say at the personal individual level and the collective level. How far do you think it's important for us to be active within the associations?
Sure. And that's also another agency that adds to our success as teachers, researchers, and community of practice. Like TESOL, because you mentioned TESOL and TOEFL Kuwait. So those are 2 major organizations that I'm involved in. And as you said, you attend conferences and you learn. There are like webinars and you learn as a teacher. There are like new ways, new lesson plans, new ideas. For example, now there is a lot of conversation around the AI and ChatGPT. So having those conversations, say, in different like aspects of in different organizations, that helps all of us as teachers to stay up to date with what is going on in the field and how to approach those ideas. Though, like with the ChatGPT, there is kind of people on the spectrum either like to accept the idea and invest that or to resist the idea. Mm-hmm. But to see the spectrum, like that's a good personal professional development. But also at the same time, joining like different committees, different task force or groups that serves those organizations which serve teachers and learners, that really helps into bringing to the conversation and the success. So it's both ways. It's mutual understanding and learning.
Yes, and I'd like to add something related to this. I had a presentation previously with the CPG-PLN within the TESOL International Association, and the presentation was entitled "The Importance of Organizational Learning." I'm someone who believes fully in the value of collaborative work, and we can learn from each other. For example, I learned something from you, Abdulsamad, and I wish to further learn it. How you organize your meetings using what's the app? It's not, I forgot
Doodle.
what's the name.
Doodle.
Doodle, yes. I'm just waiting for you to kind of show me a tutorial or something like quick how to do that when it comes to how you organize the meetings. So that's something. It might be usual for you, but for some people, I use different websites and different organization styles, but that some kind of simple things can make a difference, and can save time, most importantly. So and apart from that, organizational learning, I think, is important nowadays in the teaching field and beyond. Not only that, because volunteering is given one's time, one's effort, one's energy to be it a project or a community of practice. So we learn from each other in positive vibes and with good intentions. So that's what I really like about professional learning networks. And it got me to know a lot of wonderful, nice people just like you and my previous colleagues that I have invited to the podcast and that I'm interacting with in the ELT communities. And my best wishes to all. And I have another question, Abdulsamad, and it's related to maybe let's say, so we've covered most importantly your life purpose from different angles. Let's say I'm interested to know how Abdulsamad sees his future ikigai. So now you are aware and fully aware of this. But when it comes to, let's say, it's not a question like where do you see yourself in 5 years? No, it's not that question. But like after you get your degree, and so what are your future perspectives, let's say?
Sure. I mean, again, I think I still remember. A quote for Professor Arthur Bachner. He is a well-known professor in oral ethnography. That's a research methodology, and that's using personal stories as a way of research. He said one time in one of his YouTube videos, he mentioned that one of the professors was saying, being in academia, it's a way of life and it's not a career. And I believe in that. So staying in academia, continuing to serve the community, that's the teaching and learning community of languages, is still a big purpose to continue serving, continue doing, especially like today in many aspects, like here, in the first 3 to 5 years, many educators or teachers leave the profession. And that's also like a big thing. Being able to help people to see the value, but also being ready to go for that. I think that's a value thing. So I see myself continuing in academia, continue to grow professionally. And that's what Dr. Arthur Bachner is mentioning about like staying in academia is a way of life, but also the idea of being able to support teachers to see the value they're bringing to the table. All of us go through school, and no one, I mean, skip, unless sometimes there are like some aspects of life that wouldn't let someone to continue or drop school from their life. But when we have great teachers, and we do, but to continue serving people and serving the profession is supporting teachers to feel supported in many aspects. So I see myself staying in that, and also the idea of giving consulting aspects and advice for projects and research in teaching and learning and in academia.
Great, great. I absolutely agree with you, Abdulsamad, and especially when you mentioned that is far beyond the career path, because I also believe that it's more about the journey than the destination. So if you don't enjoy the journey step by step, how you do the research, how you collect the data, how you do your daily tasks in order to achieve your purpose and let's say your milestone. And if you just see it as a destination, I guess no one, like everyone, I think, will be impatient to reach the destination. So they won't be enjoying enough the journey. So I think it's same with travel. I don't know. I see life as a trip. And I like the metaphor so much. Thank you, Abdulsamad. Really, today I know more about you, and I would like to ask you a question, and it's related. You mentioned something in a piece of advice, and maybe later on you'll be doing this part of consultancy, let's say, but here my question, I would like you, Abdulsamad, to convey a piece of advice to our listeners, to our audience, in your mother tongue, in Arabic. And it should be kind of maybe a motto, maybe a piece of advice, nasiha or hikmah, anything you want to say to any polyglot person who knows Arabic and would like to learn something today from Abdulsamad in Arabic.
أكيد. ربما الكلمة اللي خطرت على بالي مباشرة إنه لابد أن يكون لدينا أحلام كبيرة ونتمسك بأحلامنا مهما كانت العواصف أثناء الإبحار. فهذه جدا مهمة لأنها هي التي تجعلنا زي ما قلت يا أستاذة إنه تجعلنا نستمتع بالرحلة في رحلة الأداء أكثر من رحلة الوصول نفسها.
صح. شكرا Abdulsamad. Thank you very much. I forgot even to say thank you in English. So I said shukran. But thank you and shukran and merci in all languages, Abdulsamad. And thanks for being my guest today. And I hope that this won't be the last time together we talk together in the podcast. I'm considering to start a new podcast for next year, and it's going to be related to travel. Ooh. And the value of, let's say, enjoying life through travel, and be it at work or maybe as a tourist. So, I'll be very glad if you can be my guest for the next season, let's say. And thank you, Abdulsamad. And thanks to everyone who has been watching us or listening to the IKIGAI podcast. So this is the end of our today's episode. And if you'd like to learn more about IKIGAI, I'm going to drop in the description box a link to the website and the previous episode. And hope to see you soon, and stay blessed and stay safe, everyone. And goodbye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Yousra.
Thank you.